Hello and welcome to this India Today special, where we are joined by two very special Indian legendary sports persons. That's right, coming together in a way are once again India's number one tennis men's doubles team for years, Leander Paes and Mahesh Bhupathi, in a new avatar with a new biopic on their lives called Breakpoint. Appreciate your joining us, Leander, Mahesh. Great to see you back together in a way, off the court. Give us a sense, Leander, you first, about what makes this so special, coming together after all these years to do a biopic.
It's great to see you too, Rajdeep. It has been a really interesting journey over the last 18 months with all the Zoom calls and the storyboarding and the telling of how Mahesh and myself have come together with Ashwini and Nitesh Tiwari to tell our docu-series, our true life story. I felt that doing it in a feature film of 90 minutes or 2 hours was not going to do it justice, because the story is just so big, it's so large, that you needed different episodes and different nuances to be told, where you can give Mahesh's perspective, you can give my perspective, you can give our parents' perspectives, or even our coaches, trainers, and our friends. So it's quite unique to go through this journey and relive the moments, Rajdeep, to be able to inspire the next generation on how becoming champions is done. That is my motive for doing this.
You know, it's interesting that it's a docu-series, Mahesh. It's not a biopic where you've got actors playing the roles of Mahesh Bhupathi and Leander Paes, but this is your story told by the two of you. Is that how you wanted it? You didn't want, did you believe that no one else could play Mahesh and Leander? So you had to do it yourself?
Yeah, I think there are multiple reasons for that. I think, you know, when it comes to Leander and myself, there's always been that perennial question on why and what if. Right, and I think nobody could have articulated that better than both of us if we independently told, I think, our sides of the story. So we've been approached many times, I think, individually and collectively, to tell the story in various ways. But you know, when we had Nitesh and Ashwini come to the table, not only their talent as filmmakers, but their love for tennis, honestly, made us feel like they were the right partners to do this with, and specifically in this format. So not only have we kind of laid it all out there, but our families are involved, they've spoken, our friends, our colleagues, our rivals. So it kind of makes for a good narrative, and it's not fiction, right? It's all fact coming. Everything's coming from the horse's mouth, and you never know. Maybe there is something else in the future to fictionalize and romanticize about, but this is you know, raw footage.
You know, because I saw a wonderful tennis film on the great Bog McEnroe rivalry, which is completely, in a way, sort of the attempt is to get actors to tell their story, but here you're the centerpiece in a way. The two of you of this wonderful story, because there's a bit of drama, Leander, as Mahesh puts it. The why and what if is always part of the Leander Mahesh story. What if the two of you had stayed together for another decade? Why did you split apart? Presumably that will always follow you, and presumably that's an important element of the biopic.
Yes, without giving away too much, Rajdeep, it's about how did we become champions, and why did the breakup happen? What did we do after that? And how were we able to, even through our differences, yet achieve that world record of 24 undefeated matches in Davis Cup for the country? So doing this raw and doing this in person, doing this ourselves, was very important to us. Because the only way to tell this story is in person. You cannot tell this story by having other actors there. And like we just talked about, that maybe there is another genre of way to tell this story and romanticize how two young Indian boys won Wimbledon. But here we wanted to keep it very raw. We wanted to keep it very real. We wanted to have the different nuances of perspectives from people around our story. Even our opponents like Todd Woodbridge and Mark Woodford, even the Bryan twins, we wanted their perspectives on what it was like playing against the Indian Express. So the journey has been really phenomenal. Without giving away too much here, I think that Nitesh and Ashwini have done an unbelievable job of how they've captured human emotions and weaved that into two young Indian boys who, I mean, I grew up playing gully cricket and gully football barefoot in Kolkata, right? So when I talked about as a 14-year-old, let's go win Wimbledon, everyone would turn around and say, are you joking? First go and play at Wimbledon and then let's see how you'll win it. No one's ever done it. What makes you think you're going to do it? So facing those kind of questions and facing the societal pressures that we have in India growing up of mediocrity, to face up to that and then to achieve what we did, we were pioneers at what we did. So this docu-series is actually depicting exactly how we achieved what we did. It also deals with the flaws that we had. I know a couple of stories there that both Mahesh and myself have delved in. Is a few of the experiences that we've had of how could have I done something different back in 99, or how could he have done something different in 2000. And we've been really real about it, which makes it quite fun to watch.
You know, because Leander, part of this, part of the magic, if I may call it, of the Leander Mahesh story is the differences, and you know, that's what perhaps makes it so attractive to know more about just why you had to sort of break up. Is that something that was one of the reasons why you wanted to do this? A kind of catharsis, a way of healing after all these years. Come together and tell the story.
You're exactly right, Rajdeep. Going through the archival stuff that is there. So my dad's kept about 30 scrapbooks, and each scrapbook has 1,500 pages of every single article, every single cover I've been on, every single centerfold I've been on. And going through the archival footage for this particular story, which I've never done before because I was so busy trying to win Wimbledon, trying to be successful. It was an amazing journey to see the history that we have together. Also, when I watched the video footage of episode 4 winning Wimbledon, as soon as we won Wimbledon, I looked at Mahesh because I'd asked him as a 14-year-old, would you like to win Wimbledon? And at that moment when we achieved it, when I looked over at him, his head was in his hands and I couldn't see those eyes or the emotions that he had. But when we sat on the chair next to the umpire's chair, I looked down and he actually looked at me. And now going through the footage, you know, making this docuseries and going through the footage now, I wish I had seen it then, because I would be able to see what he was thinking at that point.
And Mahesh, in that sense, is this deeply personal? You know, is there a tinge of nostalgia, of regret as you were even doing the film or talking about perhaps, as you said, what if? Is there that element of as I said, some kind of catharsis after all these years, that you're coming to terms with all that you achieved and that what you might have achieved?
I don't think that's ever, you know, played on either of our minds, to be honest. I think we are good enough tennis players to know the answer to that long before we were asked the question. I think from a having to answer it perspective, even today when I have speak to anyone or talk to anyone or go to a talk, that's the first question, right? I think we've always been extremely proud of what we were able to achieve. You know, when we started playing tennis, there was no Grand Slam champions. You know, we started winning Grand Slams. Today, there's over 30 Grand Slam trophies in India. And, you know, we won 3 doubles titles together. And, you know, people say we could have won 7. If we had won 7 in those 5 years, people would have said we would have won 10 if we stayed together. So it's always you know, no one's ever happy with what they achieve. But I think, you know, there's no doubt that we would have won more. But having said that, Leander's won, his share of titles with others. I would have won my share of titles with others. But from an India perspective, I think we definitely, set the ball rolling, and that's translated into a lot of success for others also in the next generation.
So not a tinge of regret, Mahesh, as you tell your story, is it told with a tinge of regret, or is it told with a celebratory note, look at what we've achieved, the glass half full rather than the glass half empty?
I think it's a mix. I think there's both. Most of the time it's glass half full, but I think a lot of times we both kind of alluded to, I wish I had done this differently. I wish I'd done this better, or I wish we had someone more mature around us to make sure that these things didn't happen. So, the I wish, I think, is probably the right quote.
Let me press you one last time on this particular thing, Leander. If you had to do it all over again, would you do it very differently? Would you have preferred to have won, let's say, 15 doubles titles with Mahesh, perhaps broken all records, much like the Woodfords did or the Bryans did? Or do you believe that this is just part of life? There's no point looking back at the past with regret?
I think what we achieved together has been magical and documented a lot. I think for me, if I went back to that 14-year-old kid who had that vision when I saw Mahesh for the first time, that we could win Wimbledon, we could be number one in the world. And I did not move from that spot in Sri Lanka on the side of the court when I first saw him, and I had this vision. If I had to speak to that 14-year-old now, I would tap him on the back and say, well done. Because not only have we achieved those dreams, not only did we have the Grand Slams under our belt and the number one in the world under our belt and prove to India that we can be world leaders in anything. But really, I think what I was able to do was to believe in the dream. And that is what I have respect for Mahesh and his family for, is that everyone believed in that dream. Everyone believed that 14-year-old, and even if they didn't believe in it, they didn't question him. We went on and persevered and worked hard and pioneered through making those dreams come true. And that's what I would like to remember.
And as you said, Leander, one of the reasons for doing this docu-series biopic was to inspire the next generation, because since Leander and Mahesh, really, and we can go back in the past to the Amrit Rajas and the Krishnans, we in the last 15 years haven't produced the next big thing, at least as far as men's tennis goes. Is that something that you feel is a missing element, Leander?
Yes, it is. I feel that in the field of tennis, to start with, to nurture the next Grand Slam champion is also part of our responsibility. So this is one of our first steps in that responsibility, to not only inspire the next generation of tennis player, but to inspire a whole generation of possibly 745 million kids who are under the age of 26, to show them how winning is done. To show them that if you have a dream and you are courageous enough to follow it, and you work hard enough and you believe in yourself, an undying belief, when everyone else around you is saying, "Auqat kya hai?" but you believe in yourself and you achieve that this is how it's done. I think also it's not just for tennis players and not just for athletes, where we've just come off the Tokyo Olympics, Rajdeep, and we've had the best showing in the history of the Olympics for India. 7 medals in the games, and also Paralympics. What an unbelievable showing. I think that if we can inspire one kid across the planet to show them that if you have a dream and you want to follow it, especially nowadays compared to in the 90s, you didn't have all this tech and all the support and all the knowledge that we have now. If nowadays you want to be a champion, you can do so.
Mahesh, you've been actually mentoring a lot of young people. You've been deeply involved in promoting sport even after retirement. Do you believe that's the big change that's taken place from the generation when you as 14-year-olds dreamt of a Grand Slam to today's kids who can aspire to an Olympic gold, and genuinely when they say they want gold, people will believe them, that because you've got now the likes of Neeraj Chopra, you can even dream of a track and field gold, that dreams can be translated to reality much more easily today compared to when you were 14.
Yeah, I think dreams can be achieved is the right way to put it. I think making it a reality just still involves those hundreds of thousands of, hours on the practice court. Like I said, what we did for Indian tennis initially when we were playing was the parents used to say, I want my kid to play Wimbledon. Now it's, I want my kid to win Wimbledon. And same with the Olympics, right? With Abhinav and Neeraj having won gold medals now. I mean, athletes are training to win gold. They're just not training to make the Olympics. Earlier on, it is like, oh, I want to go to the Olympics. That's part of my resume. I'm an Olympian. But now the next generation, they're training to win a gold at the Olympics. And you saw it. Bajrang came back with a bronze, but I've never seen someone so disappointed to come home with a bronze. He barely could crack a smile. And he went there with a single-minded focus of coming home with a gold. And he apologized to everyone after winning the bronze and said, I'm going to bring the gold back from Paris. So that's the generational shift when it comes to our athletes, which I think is exciting. And, hopefully they all get enough support to kind of realize those dreams.
But is there a gap in tennis, Mahesh? Is tennis one of the sports where we, dare I say, gone a step back instead of a step forward?
I mean, there's a gap in every sport, right, Rajdeep, when we're comparing ourselves to the West. I mean, I think from the Olympic sports, I think we're a little luckier because we've got private funding like JSW Sports or Olympic Gold Quest or the Tata Foundation that are supporting multiple sports. And most of these athletes who win medals are coming out from these private initiatives. In tennis, it's an individual sport and we have no support. I mean, our system in India doesn't cater to becoming a global superpower in sport, and that's the Achilles heel for sport in India in general, including tennis.
Let me ask both of you this, because presumably the film goes through all the highs and lows of a long sporting career. But Leander, if I were to ask you today, all these years later, the biggest high for you and the biggest low?
The biggest high would be winning Wimbledon, because that was the vision that I had as a 16-year-old in Sri Lanka. The biggest low would probably be 6 months later, when we actually broke up in Delray Beach and did not come back to play Wimbledon. Couldn't write a script any weirder.
When you said that just now, you sound like a lover who's lost his or his best friend. Was it a bit like that?
I've been accused of that as well, but I can assure you, we were not.
Mahesh, your biggest high and the biggest low?
I think as Leander said, Wimbledon is definitely the pinnacle of our careers, and the low for me would be that bronze medal match at the Olympics. I think that whole 72 hours with losing the semi-final the way we did, being the favorites, and then coming up couple of points short in the bronze medal match was definitely the low.
Yeah, Leander, hearing you allude to Wimbledon as the big high, I want to add the Atlanta Olympic Games as well. Mahesh says Bajrang was disappointed with the bronze, but I can tell you we were all mighty excited with your bronze then, because it was breaking a glass ceiling. So I guess that will also be a special memory always.
Yes, I think the euphoria at Atlanta was because since the Helsinki Games, many years before, India had not won an individual medal. So hence, winning in Atlanta, Rajdeep, you were right there with me, supporting me, and I remember the interviews we did then. Was how Indians can be achievers on the world stage. I think that the Atlanta story is a different story than the one we just told in Breakpoint. Breakpoint is a story of how two young Indian boys grew up in the streets of Bangalore and Muscat and Calcutta and Goa, and how we became champions. The Leander story of the Olympics will possibly be a separate story, one that will depict a different patriotic journey on how the son wanted to emulate the father. But in this one, I was very, very happy to share the nuances of a dream as a 16-year-old and how Mahesh and myself and our families really worked hard to achieve those dreams. And that's something I always respect of what both of us have done and our families have done.
So one trick question to both of you in the end. You first, Mahesh. Actor wife, is she impressed with your performance? Is she someone looking closely at the way you're responding to the camera, Mahesh?
Well, to be honest, she's very thankful that there's no acting involved and it's all a docudrama. But she's definitely been mentoring me on my look because she's a bit worried about how I dress.
You've been getting the camera angles right, or just having the right look?
Or both. Camera angles right and wearing the right clothes, so on and so forth.
Okay, good. And Leander, the last trick question to you is a question that I guess, I don't know even if it's worth asking anymore. Have you actually retired now from the game? Or are we going to see you in some avatar, who knows, even at the Australian Open in a few months from now? Has Leander Paes actually retired?
Well, I haven't played a match since the 7th of March 2020 when this lockdown broke out, because being in a bubble is really hard, especially at this stage of one's career when one's achieved a fair bit. The bubble lifestyle is not something for me. On saying that, Rajdeep, I think you've known me since I was a little kid, and for me, making a difference in the community to show how Indians can be champions is of the utmost. So I chose tennis for 31 years to do that. But before tennis, I had chosen football, and that football dream did not come to fruition. So now whatever dream that I have to prove that we Indians can be world leaders and the quality of work that we produce out of India could come in many different vehicles. Right now it's in docu-series. Next it could be in sports education. The next it could be in a feature film. The next it could be in maybe how to tell great content and stories of achievers in different walks of life. Next could be in corporate speaking or how to make a difference in the corporate world. So for me, the essence of the craft is to prove that we Indians can be world leaders in any walk that we choose to be in. I also look at the Olympics as an example on how most of our medals were won by our women athletes.
You haven't retired. Sure. But basically that means Leander Paes hasn't retired.
Well, in our last interview about 10 minutes ago, we were asked...
You haven't retired. You're still there.
And this Mahesh turns around and says, sure, if we get invited to the over 45s, we will play. So I guess I can't retire now, huh?
You know what? Maybe what you should do, and this is just a thought, that Mahesh, you and Leander should do one more Grand Slam doubles together, get a wild card, and make it a last hurrah. Possible? It's sort of like Ali's final comeback. Treat it as the last hurrah. Possible, guys?
It's definitely possible, but it could be embarrassing.
I think in the over 45s, yes,
I don't think it'll be that embarrassing. Old is gold. Or young is gold. Leander, one last hurrah. Final scene.
Maybe in the over 45s, Rajdeep. Maybe in an exhibition. I just watched Medvedev hit Djokovic off the court, and I don't want to be facing those.
Fair enough, guys. Look, wonderful to talk to both of you. So good to see both of you together smiling. And I'm looking forward to Breakpoint, which comes on Z5. So all the very best to you in whatever you do in life. You've made this country so very proud. And we've had so many wonderful memories just watching you play over these years. So God bless and stay well.
Thanks, Jam.
Thanks a lot.
God bless you.